Okay, let's unpack this. We are embarking on a deep dive today that really tackles one of the most fundamental questions, I think, in theology, maybe even cosmic philosophy.
Right.
How do you actually achieve absolute, like, permanent stability in a created order, especially one that contains free will?
It's a huge question, and you could almost frame it like as a cosmic engineering problem if you think about the universe as a system.
Yeah, system design issue.
Exactly. And our source material today, it puts forward this really strong argument that stability, peace, the ultimate security of the cosmos, it can't just happen through, say, grace or forgiveness on their own. Instead, it argues it absolutely requires a specific, undeniable structural solution, and that involves justice. Final judgment.
Right. And the central idea here, the thing that's really driving this whole discussion we're going to have, is this concept that the free will of created beings, the source is called the free will of the creatures. It gets completed or perfected eventually, but how? Through this process of visible judgment and atonement.
And that phrase, the completion of free will, that's so critical here. It's not suggesting that freedom is just, the ability to choose good or evil forever and ever.
Right, like an endless balancing act.
No, it's suggesting a state where you become structurally, fundamentally incapable of choosing evil.
Wow.
Because you have achieved perfect knowledge and perfect love. And our mission today, really, is to dig into the precise theological mechanism the sources lay out for how that transformation is guaranteed.
Okay. And the sources, they seem pretty uncompromising about what that mechanism is. They argue that the punishment of the offender, or the criminal, as they call it, that's the non-negotiable key.
Absolutely non-negotiable.
It's presented as the essential prerequisite, the thing that has to happen to erase even the possibility of sin for everyone else. Permanently.
Yeah.
So in this view, sin isn't just like a moral failing. It's more like a structural vulnerability in the system.
Exactly. A bug in the code, almost.
And final judgment is the system-wide security patch, the ultimate fix.
That's a great way to put it. We're essentially looking at justice not just as a moral good, but as a cosmic necessity for achieving universal, lasting peace. #2. The structural necessity of judgment.
Okay, so let's start there with the immediate, almost practical need for this judgment. The sources really draw a straight line, a direct cause and effect, saying that cosmic stability, real peace, it just can't take root until the criminal gets what's due.
Right. And that necessity, it flows directly from the experience, the emotional, the spiritual experience of those who are actually harmed by the criminal's actions.
Okay.
I mean, imagine a community, any community where a crime has happened, where one creature has actively, oppressed or trampled on its neighbor.
You see that all the time, unfortunately.
If that criminal just remains there unpunished, the sources really emphasize this point. The rest of the creatures, they literally cannot find rest or security.
I can absolutely see that. Even just on a human level, you live in this constant state of anxiety, right? Knowing the injustice hasn't been dealt with, and maybe the offender could just do it again.
It's an unsustainable way to live. A high-stress environment, constantly looking over your shoulder.
And it goes deeper. It actually creates a kind of crisis of faith in the whole system, in the governance of the cosmos itself. Is it just? Is it reliable?
Okay.
The sources point out that the creatures who actually witnessed the oppression, their immediate reaction was that they yearned for judgment.
They yearned for it. Not just wanted, but yearned.
Yes. And it wasn't, the sources suggest, just simple revenge they were after. It was more profound. They were seeking the restoration of balance, of cosmic equilibrium.
Makes sense.
This craving for justice is presented as being so foundational, so deep, that if it's not met, it creates this continuous spiritual and psychological instability throughout creation.
So the act of executing judgment becomes this necessary act of restoration. It's like answering the cry of creation itself.
Exactly.
And the sources even link this, you mentioned, to Scripture, like God promising to answer the cry of his chosen ones who call out day and night for justice. That's right. There's a sense of divine obligation to respond.
And the implication is that the justice has to be, well, swift, visible, absolute. That's what provides the stability they're yearning for.
Yes. But, as you pointed out earlier, the action required goes way beyond just, locking up the criminal or removing them.
Right.
The source describes this really profound twofold effect that the judgment, and specifically the subsequent death of the offender, has on the rest of creation, the righteous ones who remain.
Okay.
And this is where you really start to see the structural solution taking shape. It's not just punishment, it's transformation.
Okay, lay out that twofold effect for us, because the first part, I think, makes a kind of intuitive sense. It says the death of the criminal allows the other creatures to erase the memory of crime, which sounds like, okay, they have to let go of the trauma, the fear, maybe the suspicion that the universe might be fundamentally unfair or chaotic. But how does that work spiritually? Is it just forgetting, or is it something deeper, like a cleansing?
It's presented as something far deeper than just, forgetting a bad memory, like you might forget where you left your keys.
Right.
It's framed as the elimination of a structural possibility. Think about it. If the criminal remains, even if punished, but still somehow existing, they stand as a perpetual reminder that rebellion against God's order is possible.
Ah, okay. A living monument to the idea that the law can be broken.
Precisely. And maybe even successfully challenged, at least for a time. So when they are finally utterly destroyed, that living example of successful rebellion is just gone.
Okay.
The memory is erased in the sense that the visible, tangible evidence of chaos, of successful defiance, is eliminated from the system.
Okay, that makes more sense than just simple amnesia.
Okay.
It's removing the proof of concept for rebirth.
Exactly. And that leads directly into the second part, which, as you said, is maybe the more challenging one to grasp.
Yeah. The sources say that simultaneously with the offender's death, the righteous creatures actively kill the will to commit crime within their own hearts. How? How do they do that? How does witnessing an execution trigger that kind of internal spiritual suicide mission against their own potential for sin?
It's presented as a kind of mirrored spiritual death, and it's facilitated by achieving perfect knowledge through the whole ordeal.
Oh.
Think about their journey. They lived under the oppression or witnessed it. Maybe they harbored some tiny suspicion deep down that perhaps God's way was too restrictive, or maybe the rebel had a point.
The seeds of doubt planted by the original lie.
Exactly. And they saw a creature apparently succeed in defying God, at least temporarily. But then, when they witnessed the absolute, unavoidable consequence, the full, crushing, undeniable cost of that sin, it serves as the ultimate educational moment. It's undeniable proof.
So seeing the judgment fully executed destroys any internal justification they might have had for entertaining sin themselves.
Yeah.
It makes the very prospect of rebellion seem not just morally wrong anymore, but utterly illogical, suicidal even.
That's precisely the idea. The completion of free will is achieved in that very moment of witnessing and understanding. The creature now has full sight of God's perfect love, which we'll get into how that's proven,
Right.
and his perfect justice. They've witnessed the absolute final end of the one who doubted him. And based on that perfect knowledge, they freely, irrevocably choose to eradicate that internal temptation, that potential for sin within themselves.
So they are, in a sense, taught righteousness through judgment, as one of the verses the source uses says.
Exactly, like Isaiah 26.9. They've learned the lesson so completely, internalized it so deeply that the will itself to go down that path is just annihilated, gone.
Wow. Okay. That must provide an incredible sense of relief, then, for those who were oppressed. So sources specifically say that those who were trampled by the criminal, they witness this righteous judgment, and only then can they truly forget the pain they suffered. So the pain isn't just forgotten while the offender is still around, even if they're punished. It's only fully resolved, forgotten, when justice is complete, when the source is gone.
That's the critical link the source draws between justice and relief, justice and healing. The stability of the whole cosmic order, therefore, is presented as being directly proportional to the certainty and the finality of the judgment.
So any ambiguity, any doubt at all that crime will ultimately be punished, absolutely punished,
Means the creatures can never find true rest. That psychological vulnerability to sin, that crack in the foundation, remains structurally intact. The universe, in this view, cannot fully heal until the source of the instability and the lie that fueled it are irrevocably, visibly eliminated.
that level of absolute justice, that's the price of eternal peace, according to this framework.
That's how it's presented, yes.
Which sets the stage perfectly, then, for the events that provide the necessary proof for the righteous to accept this
Yeah.
and to make that internal transformation. #tag3, the role of the cross and first resurrection.
Right. So if the execution of judgment provides the ultimate stability, the question becomes, what allows the righteous creatures, these beings with free will, to accept that judgment as truly just and to undergo that profound internal transformation we talked about?
Yeah, what convinces them?
And that's where the source material points squarely to two pivotal events, the cross and the first resurrection. These are presented as the moments that provide the undeniable theological proof.
Okay. The sources identify these two as definitively proving God's character and also establishing the standard for a stable creation going forward. Let's take the cross first. How does the cross manage to prove both God's love and his justice according to this perspective? Because sometimes those seem like they're in tension.
They absolutely can seem that way, but the source argues the cross is where that tension is resolved in the ultimate paradox. On the one hand, justice demands a penalty for sin, death.
The wages of sin is death.
Exactly. If God had just ignored sin, just waved it away, his own justice would be invalidated. The universe would remain unstable because the rules wouldn't actually matter.
Right, the foundation crumbles.
But on the other hand, love demanded a way to somehow redeem creatures from that inevitable consequence. So by Christ dying on the cross, God himself, in human form, he demonstrates both things perfectly.
How so?
Well, he shows that sin is so incredibly severe, so damaging to the cosmic order, that it required the ultimate sacrifice, death. That satisfies the requirement of justice.
Okay.
But simultaneously, he shows that he himself was willing to make that sacrifice, to pay that price for humanity, demonstrating a love that goes beyond any human comprehension. Justice is satisfied and love is demonstrated in the same act.
And this proof, this demonstration, is actually effective in cleansing creation somehow. The source says the blood of Jesus washes away suspicion or doubt toward God from the creatures. And we established earlier that suspicion, that doubt, was the root cause of all sin in the first place.
That's absolutely the critical theological function of the cross in this specific model. It removes that first fundamental barrier to relationship and stability. Think about it. How could any creature truly, fully love a God they secretly suspected might be unfair, or arbitrary, or maybe just uncaring?
You couldn't. Not really. There'd always be that reservation.
Exactly. The cross, in this view, eliminates that suspicion by demonstrating a sacrificial love that's just overwhelming. It answers the fundamental question about God's character. The doubt, the source says, is washed away.
Okay, so the cross deals with the doubt about God's character, his love and justice. But the verification process isn't finished yet. The sources really emphasize the necessity of the first resurrection. How does that event verify the truth of the commandments?
Right, this is the crucial next step. If the cross verifies God's character, the first resurrection verifies his law.
Okay, character versus law.
The first resurrection proves that the commandments aren't just some burdensome code designed to restrict life and ultimately lead to death, which was sort of the implication of Satan's lie.
Yeah, did God really say, implying the rules are bad for you?
Precisely. Instead, the first resurrection proves the commandments are actually the pathway to eternal, indestructible life. Remember the core of the original lie in Genesis. You will surely not die, and if you disobey, you'll be like God. It was a direct challenge. God's rules lead to limitation and death. My way leads to godhood and life.
Ah, okay, I see the connection now. So the first resurrection flips that lie completely on its head. It demonstrates that death itself is swallowed up by victory for those who align with God's way. The source points to 1 Corinthians 15 there.
Exactly. Death is swallowed up in victory. And it connects the sting of death to sin and the power of sin to the law. So by Christ rising first and then by the martyrs rising in the first resurrection, they collectively prove that the law, when adhered to perfectly, or crucially, when its penalty is atoned for by Christ, doesn't lead to final destruction at all. It leads to eternal, resurrected, victorious life.
So it validates the law itself. It proves the system works, that God's way is the way to life, not death.
It verifies that the law is the eternal, true foundation for life. And the most powerful, tangible proof of this comes through the specific group mentioned, the martyr witnesses who participate in that first resurrection.
Right, the Sankyojongin. These are the individuals who stuck to the commandments even when it cost them their physical lives.
Yes, they paid the ultimate price in obedience.
So their suffering, followed by their visible, glorious resurrection, that serves as this undeniable, physical, verifiable testimony for the rest of creation to see.
Absolutely.
They become living, or rather resurrected proof that God's system leads to ultimate life, even if the path sometimes goes through death.
Precisely. Their resurrection and their subsequent transformation, the source argues, permanently exposes Satan's lie for what it was. Satan lied that obeying God leads only to suffering and death. The martyrs stand there, resurrected and glorious, demonstrating that obedience leads through suffering and death to immortal victory.
Okay. And this physical verification, this proof seen by the entire righteous creation, the source says it actually eradicates the possibility of sin in them. Now, wait, how does just seeing the martyrs resurrect, literally eradicate the possibility of sin for the righteous observers? Is it like a switch flips in their nature, or is it about their conviction becoming absolute?
The source suggests it's both, but the conviction drives the structural change in their nature, if you will. They now possess perfect knowledge. They've seen the ultimate demonstration of love on the cross. They've seen the ultimate verification of the truth of God's law in the resurrection.
Right.
They no longer have any basis, no rational basis, no spiritual basis, no observable basis upon which they could possibly build doubt or suspicion towards God or his ways.
And since doubt was the foundation of all sin.
Removing the possibility of doubt removes the possibility of sin. It's like the root system has been pulled out. For these righteous ones, the completion of free will is achieved through this comprehensive, undeniable verification process. They know the truth fully and completely.
So they are still technically choosing to obey, but they're choosing from a position of such perfect knowledge and certainty that the alternative rebellion has become utterly irrational, unthinkable. It eliminates that spiritual and psychological vulnerability that the lie introduced.
Exactly. It transforms their obedience from potentially a matter of struggle or faith in the unseen to a matter of absolute certainty based on verified reality. They move from that unstable state where free will could be swayed by deception to a completed, stable state where their free will is perfectly and permanently aligned with perfect knowledge and love. #tag for you. The eradication of doubt and the end of suspicion.
Okay, let's dig a bit deeper into this whole mechanism, the origin of sin being doubt, and how it's finally eradicated. You mentioned earlier, and it's central to this, that sin really began when Satan's lie managed to create suspicion or doubt toward God, right in the hearts of creatures.
Yes, that suspicion, that wigushim as the source material terms it, is the critical weak point. Our sources really hammer this point home. You fundamentally cannot truly love a God you doubt.
Right. Love requires trust. Absolute trust.
Absolutely. And without that true, unreserved love for God, obedience either becomes just mere compulsion, like following rules out of fear or maybe duty.
Or it just fails entirely.
Or it fails entirely, exactly, which leads directly to crime, to sin. The original lie back in Genesis, you will surely not die, you will be like God. That was a direct assault on God's character. It questioned his honesty, his motives, his goodness. It planted the seed of suspicion. Maybe God is holding out on you.
So if the entire cosmic order, the entire problem of sin, began with this sort of viral spread of doubt, then the whole goal of this entire eschatological process, this end times plan, must be the surgical removal of that doubt and its consequences.
It has to be. That's the only way to achieve permanent stability. And that's precisely what the source argues these verifiable events, the cross and the first resurrection, accomplish specifically for the righteous. They provide the perfect, undeniable knowledge needed to finally overcome the lie.
Okay, so once that suspicion is removed, thanks to this undeniable proof, then true love for God can replace it. And the sources state it very simply. The creature who truly loves God automatically keeps the commandments. It's not a struggle anymore. And this seems to move us into that state of absolute spiritual certainty we talked about, the completed free will for the righteous.
Yes. And the source describes this transformation as being so fundamental, so structural, that it actually states, drawing heavily on the language of John's letters, that the righteous creature is literally no longer able to sin.
Wow. Say that again. Not just unwilling, but unable.
Unable. Because, as the source puts it, God's seed remains in them. The very capacity for crime, for choosing rebellion, is spiritually and structurally removed. Why? Because the internal mechanism that generates doubt, the susceptibility to the lie, is gone. It's been eradicated by perfect knowledge and the resulting perfect love.
That sounds revolutionary. I mean, we usually think of free will as this constant capacity to choose either way. But this is suggesting a change in fundamental nature based on achieved knowledge and love.
It's definitely a radical framing. It's suggesting a transformation rooted in a conviction so deep, so grounded in verified reality, that it effectively functions as nature. The knowledge is absolute. They haven't just heard the truth. They have seen the life cycle of the lie, its origin, its temporary apparent success, and its ultimate catastrophic failure and judgment.
Okay.
Therefore, the source argues, even if the world around them were to collapse again, their internal stability would remain unshaken. And the source explicitly anticipates this by noting that even if, as it predicts, many of the people who live through the subsequent 1,000-year kingdom, the millennium, even if many of them do fall away later in the final rebellion.
Which seems counterintuitive, but okay.
The already righteous creatures, the ones who experience the first resurrection, they will no longer be capable of misunderstanding God's love and justice. They know with absolute certainty why the criminals must face judgment. Their conviction is set in stone. immutable.
That makes the distinction between those in the first resurrection and the rest of the populace during the millennium absolutely critical then. The martyrs and other righteous have already attained that completed free will, the others living during that time. They haven't yet faced that final, ultimate test or achieved that same level of verified knowledge.
Exactly. The righteous from the first resurrection become the verifiable standard. Their existence, their immortal state, their complete and unwavering alignment with God's law that serves as the bedrock foundation of the new creation. Their free will is complete precisely because their choice is now informed by perfect, objective, witnessed reality, which has eradicated the spiritual vulnerability that Satan introduced.
Okay, and the culmination of this whole cleansing process for creation itself involves one final active step, what the source calls returning the lie.
Yes, this is a really powerful, symbolic, but also presented as a necessary act. It's described as the moment when the created beings, collectively, actively redirect the will to sin, that internal impulse towards rebellion they've now overcome, and also the words cursing God's name, all of that negativity.
They send it back.
They send it back. They redirect it all back to the original offender, back to Satan.
That's like cleaning out a wound and not just disinfecting it, but actively taking the extracted infection and throwing it back at the source.
It's a good analogy.
It's not enough just to become clean yourself.
Yeah.
Creation must actively push the entire burden, the entire concept of sin, back onto the ultimate author of sin.
Precisely. This act of returning the lie ensures that the universe isn't just quieted down by judgment, but is actively, thoroughly purified of even the residue of rebellion. The new foundation has to be built on pure, untainted truth. This ensures that no lingering speck of doubt, no echo of the curse, no dormant, rebellious impulse remains anywhere in the system to potentially destabilize the eternal order down the line. It's the final, complete, spiritual decontamination. #V, the finality and timing of ultimate judgment.
Okay, let's talk about the timing of all this, because the sources make some claims here that frankly challenge a lot of conventional end times timelines people might hold.
They do offer a very specific sequence.
And if cosmic stability truly requires this judgment, then that judgment has to be absolutely fixed, unchangeable, right? The source is emphatic about this.
Right.
The judgment against the offenders, the criminals, it's predetermined. It cannot be reversed.
Yes, the emphasis on the finality of the judgment is crucial for the stability aspect. The source explicitly states that the possibility of these criminals somehow avoiding the lake of fire is zero, absolutely zero.
Wow.
They are only, as the text puts it, not yet thrown in, but their fate is sealed.
And this absolute certainty, this allows the righteous to finally find that rest we talked about earlier, knowing that the structural stability they yearn for is absolutely guaranteed, even if the final execution is still technically in the future.
Exactly. It provides the necessary assurance. The righteous can enter into their rest knowing the problem has been solved definitively. The outcome is certain.
And this certainty was established, as we discussed, by the first resurrection. That event validated the commandments as the unshakable standard for eternal life and, consequently, for judgment. So the outcomes essentially determined the moment that standard was publicly, physically verified by the resurrected martyrs.
That's the logic presented. Now, let's get into that crucial timing element you mentioned, the timeline regarding the comprehensive atonement. This is where the source really takes a unique, maybe even controversial stance.
Okay, what does it say?
It states very clearly that the atonement of the created order, the Pijojui Sokcho, is considered finished, completed, before Satan is bound in the abyss for the 1,000 years.
Wait a minute. That is highly counterintuitive. I mean, standard thinking is often that the millennium, the 1,000-year kingdom, happens, and then there's the final Gog and Magog rebellion after Satan is released. Doesn't that imply sin is still possible during and after the millennium, meaning atonement couldn't really be finished before it even starts?
It's a great question, and the source addresses this by drawing a distinction between the factual or legal completion of atonement for the created order itself and the final execution of judgment on remaining individuals.
Okay, factual versus final execution. Unpack that a bit.
The argument is that the functionally necessary work for eternal stability is completed before the millennium. The price has been paid, the cross. The standard for eternal life has been definitively proven, the first resurrection. The lie has been exposed, the doubt has been removed for the righteous, and the primary architect and tempter, Satan, has been removed from the scene.
So all the necessary components for a permanently stable, sin-free eternal order are put in place at that point.
Exactly. The sources argued that this establishes the complete atonement for the created order itself. The universe, as a system, is structurally secured against eternal rebellion from that point forward. The atonement is factually completed, as the source puts it.
So when Jesus locks up Satan in the abyss, that act signifies that the fundamental work of cosmic atonement is done, even if there's a temporary, final testing period to follow for those not yet perfected.
Yes, the necessary conditions for eternal stability have been met. The final acts of judgment that come later, Satan's brief release, the final rebellion, and the white throne judgment, these serve primarily to complete the physical execution of the already predetermined verdict against those individuals who persist in rejecting the now verified truth.
Okay, this completely reframes the purpose of the millennium then. If the atonement is already factually complete for the cosmos, the millennium becomes less about a final chance for global repentance.
And more about demonstrating the absolute inherent nature of rebellion in those hearts that still reject the verified truth, even when living in a seemingly perfect, paradise-like environment with the main tempter removed.
Wow. So it serves as the ultimate confirmation that the problem wasn't just Satan's influence, but the deep-seated rebellion in certain hearts. It verifies the absolute necessity of the final permanent removal of the unrighteous.
Precisely. It confirms that free will, when informed by the now perfected knowledge of the righteous, only chooses love and obedience. And free will, when still rooted in hatred and rebellion against the known truth, will still choose crime, even in the best possible circumstances.
Which then logically leads us to the ultimate physical endpoint, the Great White Throne Judgment. This is the final, absolute clean slate moment for the cosmos.
Yes. The White Throne Judgment is presented as the final courtroom scene, where the last judgment is executed against all remaining offenders, human and angelic. They are guaranteed at this point to be cast into the lake of fire. There's no appeal, no alternative.
And this act finally secures the eternal promise. After the White Throne Judgment, the created order will contain no more sin, no more death, no more sorrow, no more tears. The new heavens and new earth can proceed in absolute permanent security.
Exactly. The timing ensures that the righteous who entered their rest potentially 1,000 years earlier did so with the absolute, unwavering assurance that this final stability was not just hoped for, but guaranteed.
Now, to make these really high-level, almost abstract cosmic concepts feel a bit more concrete, the source material does something interesting. It explicitly grounds them in specific Old Testament rituals. It presents these rituals as like earthly reflections or small-scale models of the cosmic principles we've been discussing.
That's right. They serve as teaching tools illustrating the underlying spiritual mechanics.
Let's start with one very specific case it highlights. The incident of blasphemy described back in Leviticus chapter 24.
Yes, this narrative is presented as critical because it illustrates, in miniature, the exact mechanism the source argues is required for cosmic cleansing. You see immediate judgment, you see physical removal from the holy community, and you see a ritual transfer of the offense back onto the perpetrator before the final consequence.
Okay, so the story involves the son of an Egyptian man and an Israelite woman. He gets into a fight within the camp, and in the heat of it, he curses and reviles the name of God.
Blasphemes the name.
And the severity of this is immediately clear because the text says he's instantly detained. They hold him while waiting specifically for God's command on what to do. Why is that immediate detention so crucial in this analogy?
Because blasphemy, cursing the sacred name of God, is seen as the external manifestation of that internal lie we keep talking about. It's doubt, suspicion, rebellion, directed at the Creator, made audible, made public. If that curse, that audible rejection of God's authority and goodness is allowed to just hang there unanswered within the holy camp, the source implies it destabilizes the entire foundation of their covenant relationship with God. It's like introducing a virus.
So the sin can't be tolerated even temporarily. It has an infectious quality, just like cosmic doubt infects creation.
Exactly. It has to be contained immediately. And then God's command comes, and it specifies this very particular ritual of removal and judgment.
Right. First, the man must be dragged outside the camp. That seems symbolic in itself, removing the offense from the holy presence from the community.
Physical separation is the first step. Impurity must be removed from the sacred space.
But the really key ritual happens before the final punishment, the stoning.
Yes, the transfer mechanism. This is crucial. The command is that those individuals who actually heard the curse, they must lay their hands on the blasphemer's head.
Why? What does that signify?
This is presented as the moment of accountability for the community, but also their cleansing. By physically laying hands on his head, the curse they heard, the sin, the act of blasphemy itself is ritually and symbolically transferred back onto the perpetrator. The community is actively participating in purging itself by redirecting the evil back to its source.
So they're not passive observers. They're actively involved in isolating and returning the offense.
Correct. And only after that transfer, after that act of essentially returning the lie or returning the curse on a physical, tangible level, only then does the entire assembly participate in executing the judgment by stoning him to death.
And the ruling explicitly states this applies equally to everyone in the community, whether they're native-born Israelites or foreigners living among them.
Right. The universality underlines the absolute nature of the principle. The integrity of the divine name, the foundation of their relationship with God, must be protected by the absolute, visible removal and judgment of the one who defiled it. The community is cleansed and stabilized because they actively witness and participate in the execution of the curse upon the criminal.
And in doing so, maybe they are, in a way, killing the will to sin within their own hearts by seeing the swift, fatal consequence applied directly to the physical act of rebellion.
That's certainly the connection the source material implies. Witnessing the consequence reinforces the boundary.
Okay, so this principle of transferring sin and physically removing it from the community, that leads us directly to the other major ritual the source references repeatedly, the scapegoat ritual. From the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, described in Leviticus 16.
Yes, the scapegoat, or the Azazel goat, is presented as perhaps the highest expression of this cosmic cleaning process within the Old Testament sacrificial system.
So on that holiest day of the year, the high priest takes all the sins, all the iniquities, all the transgressions of the entire people of Israel, the collective burden of their wrongdoing for the whole year,
Everything.
and he confesses them while laying his hands on the head of a live goat, transferring it all symbolically onto this one animal.
That act of transfer, again, is paramount. The sin isn't just magically forgiven or ignored, it is physically, ritually displaced. It has to be moved from the community onto this designated carrier.
And significantly, that goat is specifically designated for Azazel. What's the importance of Azazel here?
Well, the exact meaning of Azazel is debated, but in this theological context, it's often understood to represent a desolate place, the wilderness far removed from habitation, or perhaps even a demonic entity associated with the origin of sin or rebellion.
Okay.
So the fact that the sin-laden goat is sent to Azazel implies the sin is being returned to the domain of desolation, chaos, and rebellion. It's symbolically being sent back to the realm or even the entity associated with the source of evil itself.
I see. So the goat is then led away deep into the wilderness, into a solitary land, carrying all those confessed sins completely away from the camp, away from the presence of the righteous community.
It's the ritualized elimination of both the guilt and the memory, the very presence of sin from the holy congregation for another year.
So connecting the dots, as the source material does, these rituals, the blasphemer's judgment and the scapegoat's journey, they illustrate the larger cosmic principle we've been discussing.
Exactly. They show that sin, the curse, the rebellion, the will to offend, it must ultimately be gathered up and transferred back onto the ultimate cosmic offender, the original source, Satan, who is perhaps typified by Azazel.
And then physically and symbolically removed entirely from the presence of the righteous community, the redeemed creation, in order to restore and maintain holiness and stability.
Right.
The blasphemer's fate demonstrates the necessity of judging and removing the individual source of defilement when it arises. The scapegoat demonstrates the necessity of transferring the total accumulated burden of sin back to the cosmic source of defilement, as and to Satan, and removing it entirely from God's presence and his people.
So these ancient rituals weren't just, peculiar ceremonies. They were teaching Israel, and by extension, teaching us about this cosmic reality. Sin can't just be waved away. For true, lasting holiness and peace, it has to be fully accounted for, returned to its origin, and physically removed. This is the pattern, the blueprint for the final, absolute cleansing of the cosmos, culminating in the white throne judgment.
That's the argument. The creation, having seen the lie definitively exposed, having seen perfect love and justice demonstrated, and finally witnessing the burden of sin returned to the liar before he and all unreformed rebels are permanently removed.
Yeah.
Then creation finds its perfect, secure, eternal rest. And that rest is guaranteed, the source suggests, partly because the righteous have actively participated in this whole process, either ritually, like the Israelites, or in the final cosmic sense, by witnessing the full verification of God's character through the cross, the truth of his law through the resurrection, and the final execution of justice. They haven't just been passively purified. They've been permanently educated and transformed by the entire experience.
Their free will is completed, solidified in righteousness through that journey of seeing, understanding, and choosing based on perfect knowledge. #7 conclusion.
Wow. Okay. This has been an incredibly detailed look at a very specific and I'd say challenging theological system. It really frames justice not just as, a moral good, but as the absolute foundational requirement for eternal security in the cosmos. We started this deep dive trying to define the price of cosmic peace according to these sources.
And what we found, according to this perspective, is that the price is multifaceted. It requires the perfect, visible execution of justice against irredeemable rebellion. But just as crucially, it requires the undeniable proof of God's perfect love and the truth of his ways, verification provided supremely by the cross and the first resurrection.
And it's this combination that achieves the goal. Eliminating the suspicion and doubt that were the very source of all sin.
Exactly.
We learned that, in this view, the perfection or completion of free will for the righteous isn't about some endless precarious struggle. It becomes a spiritual certainty, a state achieved by witnessing and internalizing this perfect justice and love.
Right. Doubt is extinguished. The original lie is not just ignored, but actively identified and symbolically returned to its source. And through this entire process, creation moves towards a stable, permanent state where the very possibility of misunderstanding God or doubting his goodness and fairness has been eradicated for the righteous.
So maybe the most striking insight for you, the listener, today is how functionally necessary this whole complex process is presented as being. The structural stability of the entire universe in this model hinges on the erasure of the memory of crime, not just forgetting, but removing its power, and the simultaneous killing of the will toward crime within the righteous.
And that's achieved not only by punishing the ultimate criminal, the source of sin, but perhaps even more importantly, by objectively, undeniably proving the inherent truthfulness and life-giving nature of God's commandments, primarily through the resurrected martyr witnesses. It's this verification that fundamentally transforms and guarantees the nature of the eternal creation.
Which brings us back just one last time with that provocative point about timing. We established that the source material argues the comprehensive atonement for the created order is considered factually completed when Satan is locked away in the abyss, which happens before the 1,000-year kingdom even begins. And this means that the certainty of God's love and justice and the truth of his law has already been fully verified for the righteous who participate in that first resurrection. They've achieved that completed free will.
Right. So if those righteous individuals are, by that point, fundamentally incapable of sinning anymore because God's seed remains in them, their doubt is gone, the lie has been disproven for them, then that final temporary rebellion of the wicked that happens after the 1,000 years, when Satan is briefly released, it must serve a purpose far beyond simply testing the faithfulness of humanity one last time. It certainly can't shake the already perfected righteous.
So the final provocative thought for you to wrestle with is this. What is the ultimate purpose of that final seemingly futile rebellion and falling away, given that the cosmos in this view is already factually secured and the righteous are already immutable?
If it's not to test the righteous, perhaps it serves as the ultimate, final, necessary public demonstration for the entire watching creation, including perhaps the angelic hosts, a demonstration of the unchangeable nature of rebellion in hearts that have definitively rejected God's proven truth. Even when placed in a near-perfect environment, even after witnessing millennia of peace, their inherent choice remains rebellion.
So it becomes the final, irrefutable piece of evidence.
Exactly. The evidence that proves to the entire eternal creation, beyond any shadow of a doubt for all time, why the final judgment and the permanent removal of such rebellion is not only just but absolutely necessary for eternal peace and stability. It sets the unquestionable standard for the new heavens and the new earth, bringing the cosmic story full circle, from the instability caused by the first doubt to the eternal certainty grounded in absolute, verified truth.